Hello and welcome to Effortless Mastery. We'll be starting a new series on general embryology, and for today, we'll be learning about introduction to embryology, the basic terminologies. You're having some confusions about, which word should I use in this instance? That's what today's class is going to handle. So I'll begin by defining embryology. What is embryology? Embryology is just a branch of anatomy that studies how the structures of the human body develops. Now, anatomy as a broad course looks at structures, body structures. But when I say embryology, my key study here is development. How does the body develop from one cell, which was at fertilization? Of course, every human began from fertilization, when sperm fertilized an egg to form a zygote. How do I move from one cell, called a zygote, to a full-grown human being who has heads, eye, nose, the limbs, upper and lower, and every other part of the body? So how do I move from one cell to all of this? That is embryology. Development of the human body or development of the structures of human being are broadly divided into two. First, I have development within the uterus. So of course, after the egg is fertilized, called a zygote, development within the uterus is called, anything happening within the uterus is called intrauterine. So that period is called an intrauterine period, and it coincides with the period before birth. So some people call it prenatal, before birth. But then anything outside the uterus, when I have the child full grown outside the uterus, I call it extrauterine. And of course, during this period of where I say it is extrauterine, it's after birth. So I can also call it postnatal. So intrauterine prenatal period, extrauterine postnatal period. For the emphasis of embryology, we'll learn more about intrauterine. Now, during intrauterine, one of the most important things in embryology, I love you to always remember, is date, weeks, hours. The exact day something happens, the exact week a particular structure develops. So when I look at the structures intrauterine, the intrauterine period is divided broadly into two. The first 0 to 8 week of pregnancy is called embryonic period. So this is the period, of course, this is 0 to 8, the child is still in the womb. So I call it intrauterine period. But the intrauterine period between 0 to 8 weeks is called embryonic period. And then after 8 weeks, so we can say from 9th week to full term till birth, is called fetal period. So broadly, intrauterine period, which is development within the uterus, is broadly divided into two. Between 0 to 8 week, we call it an embryo. And from 9th week up until birth, just before birth, it is called a fetus. So it's called fetal period. Now I've mentioned some words already. So that means the embryo at this point, or the developmental structure at this point, is called an embryo. But at this other moment, that child in utero is called the fetus. What else is important for our knowledge? Within this embryonic period, there's a particular period that is very delicate, because that is a period whereby 3rd to 8th week, the period whereby organs are forming. So we call it organogenesis. So this period is a very critical period within the embryonic period, whereby organs, so when I talk about the eye, that's when the structure, the primordium, like the first thing that has to do with the eye, will come out. So it's called organogenic period or organogenesis. So that is 3rd to 8th week. Now, another thing that's important for us to remember is now when birth has happened, extrauterine period. What are the key timings in extrauterine? Immediately a child is born, that child is called a neonate. So a neonate is just a newborn within first 4 weeks. Of course, 4 weeks means 1 month. So the newborn within the first 4 weeks, whereas an infant is actually the newborn within the first 1 year. And then from that 1 year up until puberty, we call that period childhood. Then puberty, reproductive age, and then after that, the next thing we now have here would now be adulthood. All right, so like I said at the start, in summary, embryology is the study or the branch of anatomy that studies development of structures. So I am just keenly focused on how structures of the human body develop. And in embryology, development, I'm not looking at how we started from zygote up until a full-grown multicellular organism. I said it's divided into two periods. The development that occurs within the uterus called intrauterine period, and development that occurs outside the uterus, a period called extrauterine period. Now, for the intrauterine period, pregnancy is for about 38 weeks or 9 months. Now, for those 38 weeks, the first 8 will fall under embryonic period, but the last from 9th up until birth is fetal period. Now, within the embryonic period, I have organogenic period, which is 3 to 8 weeks. And then after birth has happened, that's extrauterine period. The newborn within first 4 weeks is called a neonate. Newborn within first 1 year is called an infant. Then from the period between infancy, that is after 1 year, up until puberty is called childhood. And then puberty, it differs in different people, but that's when someone has the ability to procreate. And then adulthood is from 18 years in some countries, some people 18 to 21, but after then, we're in adulthood. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'll stay connected as we go into the next topic on this series. Thank you very much. I'll see you in our next class. Do well to subscribe and then hit that like button and drop a comment so that the video can go to as many people as possible.